I was pulling into my parents' driveway when Dr. Henley called me, her voice shaking like I'd never heard before. The autumn leaves were falling around their Victorian house, the same house where I'd grown up, where I'd broken my arm falling from the oak tree, where I'd brought my first girlfriend to meet them. Everything looked exactly as it always did on these first Sunday dinners of the month. My mother's garden roses were still blooming despite the October chill. My father's Buick was parked at its precise angle, exactly 18 inches from the garage door, just like always. Garrett, whatever you do tonight, don't eat or drink anything your parents give you. My hand froze on the car door handle. The engine was still running, the heat blowing against my face, but suddenly I felt cold everywhere. Dr. Margot Henley had been our family physician for 15 years. She'd treated my broken bones, my teenage acne, my college anxiety. She'd never sounded like this, never called me on a Sunday evening, never spoken with this kind of raw panic bleeding through her professional composure. What are you talking about? Through the dining room window I could see my mother, Vera Novak, moving back and forth, her gray hair pinned up the way she always wore it for Sunday dinners, her favorite apron tied around her waist. She was carrying something to the table, probably the pot roast she'd been making for these dinners since before I could remember. My father, Roland, crossed behind her, wine bottle in hand, examining the label with those reading glasses he refused to admit he needed all the time now. Your blood work from last week's physical came back, and I ran it 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Garrett, you have thallium in your system, not a trace amount, not accidental exposure. Someone has been poisoning you systematically for at least 6 months. The words didn't make sense. They bounced around in my head like lottery balls refusing to line up into meaning. Poison, my parents' house, the monthly dinners, my mother waving at me through the window now, her face lighting up with that smile that had greeted me after every bad day, every heartbreak, every failure and success of my 32 years. That's impossible. I'm fine. I teach chemistry, Dr. Henley. I'd know if I was being poisoned. Would you? The fatigue you mentioned last month? The occasional numbness in your fingers you attributed to grading too many papers? The hair loss you said was stress from the new department head position? Garrett, these are all classic symptoms of chronic thallium exposure. Small doses, given regularly, building up slowly in your system. My father had joined my mother at the window now. He tapped his watch and mouthed, "Food's getting cold," with that mock stern expression he'd used when I was late for curfew in high school. Behind them, the dining room table was set with the good china, the burgundy tablecloth my mother saved for special occasions, the silver candlesticks that had belonged to my grandmother. Dr. Henley, these are my parents. My parents. There has to be some mistake. There's more. Her voice dropped lower, as if she was afraid someone might overhear even though she was probably calling from her locked office. I did something I shouldn't have. I accessed their pharmacy records. Your father has been filling prescriptions for medications he shouldn't need. Chelation agents. Compounds that would mask symptoms of heavy metal poisoning. He's been getting them from different pharmacies across town, never the same place twice. Garrett, they know what they're doing to you. I watched my mother return to the window. She pressed her palm against the glass and tilted her head with concern. Even from the car, I could read her lips. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" The same words she'd said when she picked me up from school with a fever, when she found me crying after my first heartbreak, when she visited me in my new apartment after the divorce. "I have to go in," I heard myself say. "Garrett, no. Did you not hear what I just said?" "They're my parents, Doctor. Henley. If what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying I believe it yet, but if it's true, I need to know why. I need to look them in the eyes and understand how the 2 people who gave me life could be trying to take it away." "Then, at least let me call the police first." "No, not yet. If you're wrong about this, if there's some explanation, I don't want squad cars in my parents' driveway. I don't want to destroy my family over a medical misunderstanding. And if I'm right? I thought about all the dinners before this one, the way my mother always insisted I finish everything on my plate. The special beer my father would open just for me, saying he'd been saving it for our dinner. The desserts my mother would pack up for me to take home, homemade cookies and brownies that I'd eat throughout the week. The vitamins she'd started sending me 6 months ago, right around the time the fatigue began. If you're right, then the two people I trusted most in this world have been slowly murdering me with pot roast and apple pie, and I need to know why before I never get the chance to ask. My mother had left the window, probably heading to the door to check on me. In seconds, she'd be on the porch, calling out with genuine worry, asking if everything was all right, if work was stressing me out, if I needed to talk. She'd approach the car with that maternal concern that had been my safety net for 3 decades. "I'm going in," I said to Dr. Henley, "but I won't eat anything. I'll pretend I'm not feeling well. Garrett, please." What she told me next about my own mother and father made my blood run cold, but it also made me realize I had no choice but to face them. Because if the people who taught me to tie my shoes and ride a bike, who sat through every parent-teacher conference and cheered at every graduation, who still called me every Sunday night to make sure I was eating enough and sleeping well, if those same people were capable of slowly, methodically poisoning me to death, then everything I believed about love, family, and trust was a lie, and I needed to know which version of my parents was real, the ones who raised me or the ones who were killing me. I turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady but my resolve firm. Whatever was waiting for me inside that house, behind my mother's warm smile and my father's firm handshake, I was going to face it. Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who tucked you in at night and taught you not to be afraid of the dark. The front door opened before I could knock, and there stood my mother, her face creased with the familiar worry lines that appeared whenever she thought I wasn't taking care of myself. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like rosemary and butter, the same combination that had meant home since before I could form memories. Her hands patted my back in that rhythmic way mothers do, as if checking that all the pieces of their child are still intact. "You sat in the car for so long, I thought something was wrong," she said, pulling back to study my face. Her hazel eyes, the same ones I saw in the mirror every morning, searched mine with genuine concern. "You look pale, sweetheart. Have you been eating?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just had a long week at school." The lie came out smooth, automatic, even as doctor. Henley's warning echoed in my head. I followed her inside, each step feeling like I was walking deeper into a trap that had been set by the people who taught me to look both ways before crossing the street. The house wrapped around me with its familiar warmth. Every photograph on the wall told a story I knew by heart. My first day of kindergarten with a gap-toothed grin, my high school graduation where Dad's proud tears were barely hidden, my wedding day when Mom adjusted my tie 12 times before declaring it perfect. The divorce papers weren't photographed, but Mom had held me through that too, making me soup and telling me that sometimes love means knowing when to let go. "Roland, Garrett's here," Mom called toward the kitchen, then turned back to me with that appraising mother's gaze. "You've lost weight, I can see it in your face. Are you sure you're eating proper meals, not just those frozen dinners?" Before I could answer, Dad emerged from the kitchen, wine bottle in one hand, corkscrew in the other. His face broke into that reserved smile he saved for moments that mattered. Roland Novak wasn't an emotional man, but his love had always been steady, reliable, like compound interest accumulating over time. "There's my professor," he said, setting down the wine to shake my hand, then pulling me into a brief hug that smelled like his same Old Spice cologne. "Department head now, right? Youngest one in the school's history. Your mother tells everyone at her book club." "Dad, it's just a title." "It's an achievement," he corrected, his accountant's mind always precise about giving proper credit. "You earned it. Now come on, your mother's been cooking all day." The dining room was set like a magazine spread. The burgundy tablecloth was pressed without a single wreath, the silverware aligned with military precision, and the good china plates gleamed under the chandelier's soft light. 3 place settings, as always, though the table could seat 8. We'd shrunk from a family of 4 to 3 after my sister Jenna died in a car accident 10 years ago, but Mom still sometimes set a 4th place by accident, muscle memory overriding grief. "I made your favorite," Mom announced, carrying in the roast on her mother's serving platter. The meat glistened with perfect browning, surrounded by those little potatoes and carrots she always cooked until they were soft enough to melt on your tongue. "And there's apple pie for dessert. Made the crust from scratch this morning." Dad poured the wine, a Malbec he'd been telling me about for weeks. Found this at that little shop downtown. The owner said it was from a small family vineyard in Mendoza, same region we visited on our 40th anniversary. Your mother cried at how beautiful the mountains were. "Roland, I did not cry. I had allergies. You had emotions," he countered with gentle teasing, the kind of marital banter that comes from 38 years of practice. "Nothing wrong with that." They moved around each other with practiced synchronization, Mom serving the meat while Dad handled the vegetables, their hands never colliding, their rhythm unbroken. This was the dance I'd grown up watching, the partnership I'd tried and failed to replicate in my own marriage. "So, tell us about work," Mom said, settling into her chair with that expectant look that meant she wanted real details, not the summaries I sometimes tried to pass off. "How are your students this semester?" I took a sip of wine, buying time, the liquid rich and smooth on my tongue. Had it always tasted slightly metallic, or was I imagining that now? "They're good. Challenging. This generation asks different questions than we did." "That's what keeps you sharp," Dad said, cutting his meat into precise, even pieces, everything organized on his plate so nothing touched. "Complacency is the enemy of excellence." Mom reached over and touched my hand, her fingers warm and familiar. "You look tired though, sweetheart. Really tired. Have you been taking those vitamins I sent you, the ones with the green label?" "Sometimes," I admitted, thinking of the bottles lined up in my medicine cabinet, dutifully purchased, sporadically taken. "You need to be consistent," she fussed, that maternal worry creeping back into her voice. "Your immune system needs support, especially with winter coming. You always got sick so easily as a child. Remember that year you had pneumonia twice?" I remembered. She'd slept in a chair by my bed for a week each time, reading me stories, and making sure I took every dose of medicine exactly on schedule. She'd been my guardian, my protector, the one who would have fought dragons if they'd threatened me. Now, Dr. Henley's voice whispered that she might be the dragon herself. The pot roast sat on my plate, steam rising with its familiar scent. Every Sunday for 20 years, this exact meal, with only minor variations. After Jenna died, Mom had clung to routines like life rafts, as if maintaining traditions could somehow keep the rest of us from slipping away too. Dad had thrown himself into his work, then retirement planning, then actual retirement, each phase meticulously organized as if chaos could be defeated with proper documentation. "Aren't you hungry?" Mom asked, noticing I hadn't started eating yet. "Just savoring the moment," I said, picking up my fork, pushing a carrot around the plate. "It smells amazing." "Taste it while it's hot," Dad encouraged, already several bites into his own portion. "Your mother outdid herself tonight." They were both watching me now with expressions of such normal parental anticipation that my chest ached. These were the people who'd taught me that families take care of each other, that love means showing up, that trust is the foundation of everything worthwhile. If they were poisoning me, then every lesson they'd taught me was a lie, and the foundation of my entire life was built on sand that was already sliding away beneath my feet. I pushed the carrot to the other side of my plate, then speared a small piece of potato, bringing it halfway to my mouth before setting it back down. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I knew it was Dr. Henley without looking. "Everything all right?" Dad asked, his fork pausing midway through cutting another piece of meat. "Just work stuff," I said, but my hand was already reaching for the phone. "Sorry, let me just check this quickly." "Garrett, you know the rule about phones at dinner?" Mom said, but her voice was gentle, more concerned than scolding. "I know, I'm sorry. It might be about the lab equipment order that's been delayed." Another lie, sliding out easier than the truth. I stood up, phone in hand. "Let me just step outside for 1 second. I promise I'll be right back." I walked through the kitchen, past the counter where Mom's prescription bottles stood in their usual row. Medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, the normal arsenal of aging. Outside on the back porch, the October air hit my face like cold water. I answered the phone before it could ring again. "Garrett, thank God, Doctor." Henley's voice was even more strained than before. "I've been going through your test results again, comparing them to your previous blood work. The thallium levels show a clear pattern. Every spike corresponds to the Monday after your family dinners. It's been building up systematically for 6 months." "That's not possible," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I was calculating backward. 6 months ago was April. That's when the fatigue started. When Mom began sending me those vitamin supplements. When Dad started pouring specific wines he'd been saving for our dinners. There's more. I pulled your parents' pharmacy records, and I know I shouldn't have. But Garrett, your father's been filling prescriptions for Prussian blue and DMSA. Those are chelation agents used specifically for heavy metal poisoning. He's been getting them from different pharmacies, never the same place twice, always paying cash. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the porch steps where I used to wait for the school bus 30 years ago. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he's being poisoned too. The prescriptions are written for fabricated conditions. False names on some of them. Garrett, he's been researching this. I found medical journal downloads on thallium poisoning from his IP address at the library. Articles about dosage, accumulation rates, symptom management. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mom clearing my barely touched plate. Her face creased with worry. She said something to Dad, who looked toward the back door with concern. They were having one of their silent conversations, the kind where a lifetime of marriage made words unnecessary. "I don't understand," I said, my voice sounding hollow and strange. "Why would they do this? These are my parents. They drove me to college. They helped me pay for my divorce lawyer. Mom still calls to remind me to change my air filters. I don't know why, but Garrett, you need to leave. Now. Come to the hospital. We'll start chelation therapy immediately. The damage might not be permanent if we act quickly." "Damage?" "The numbness in your fingers you mentioned last month? That's peripheral neuropathy. The fatigue, the hair loss, the occasional confusion you attributed to stress. Your body is slowly shutting down, Garrett. Another few months of this and the damage becomes irreversible. Another year and you're dead." The back door opened. Dad stepped out, his face etched with the kind of parental concern I'd seen 1,000 times before. "Son, your mother's worried. The food's getting cold." I looked up at him. This man who taught me to ride a bike, who'd stayed up all night helping me with calculus homework, who'd been the definition of steady, reliable love my entire life. "I'll be right in, Dad." He hesitated, then sat down beside me on the steps, his knees creaking the way they did now. "What's really going on, Garrett? And don't say work. I know you better than that." "Do you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with that analytical gaze that had made him such a good accountant. "What kind of question is that?" "Dr. Henley called," I said, watching his face carefully. "About my blood work." The change was subtle, just a tightening around his eyes, a slight straightening of his spine. "Oh? Everything okay?" She found something unusual, some kind of metal in my system. Thallium, she called it. Dad's hand, resting on his knee, went perfectly still. For 3 seconds, he didn't breathe. Then he stood up slowly, deliberately, like a man aging in fast forward. "You should come inside, Garrett. Your mother needs to hear this too." "Dad, what did you do?" He turned at the door, his face no longer the concerned parent but something else, something I'd never seen before. It was resignation mixed with determination, like a chess player who'd known this moment would come but had played the game anyway. "We did what we had to do," he said quietly. "What any parent would do to save their child." "Save me? Dad, you're killing me." "No," he said, his voice firm with absolute conviction. "We're saving you from something much worse. Come inside, Garrett. Let us explain. You deserve to know the truth, the whole truth. About your family, about what's in your blood that's far more dangerous than thallium, and about why your mother and I made the hardest decision of our lives 6 months ago." He walked back into the house, leaving me on the porch with the phone still pressed to my ear and Doctor. Henley's voice frantically calling my name. The autumn wind picked up, scattering leaves across the yard where I'd played as a child, where I'd been safe, where I'd been loved, where, apparently, I'd also been slowly poisoned by the 2 people I trusted most in the world. "I have to go," I told Doctor. Henley. "Garrett, no, I'm calling the police." "Give me 1 hour," I said. "I need to hear this. I need to understand. 1 hour, then you can call whoever you want." I hung up before she could protest and walked back into my childhood home, where my parents were waiting at the dining room table, their hands clasped together like they were about to deliver a terminal diagnosis, which, I realized as I sat down across from them, they probably were. I sat down at the dinner table, my untouched plate now pushed to the side. Mom had stopped pretending everything was normal. Her hands were folded in front of her, knuckles white, her wedding ring catching the light as her fingers trembled. Dad sat rigid beside her, his accountant's posture perfect even now, even as our family collapsed into something unrecognizable. "How long have you known?" Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About an hour. Dr. Henley called when I pulled up." "We were so careful," Dad said, more to himself than to me. "Different pharmacies, cash payments, measured doses." "You admit it, then?" My voice cracked on the words. "You've been poisoning me?" Mom flinched as if I'd slapped her. "That word makes it sound so cruel. We've been medicating you, Garrett. There's a difference." "Medicating me with poison without my knowledge or consent? What's the difference, Mom?" She stood abruptly, walked to the hutch where she kept the family photos, and pulled out a thick manila folder hidden behind our collection of photo albums. Her hands shook as she set it on the table between us. "This is the difference." I opened the folder. Medical records spilled out, but not mine. They were dated from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. Names I recognized from family stories jumped out at me. Uncle Theodore, Great-Uncle Samuel, my grandfather Martin, who died when I was 3. "Keep reading," Dad said grimly. Psychiatric evaluation forms, involuntary commitment papers, police reports. The words blurred together into a horrifying pattern. Violent episodes, paranoid delusions, auditory hallucinations, danger to others, permanent institutionalization, suicide. "Every male in my family line," Mom said, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "For at least 4 generations that we can document. It starts around 33. Always 33. First, it's just confusion, forgetting things. Then paranoia. Then the voices start, then violence." I stared at a photo, paper-clipped to one report. Uncle Theodore at my age, smiling at a barbecue, looking completely normal. The next page showed him 5 years later in restraints at a psychiatric facility, his eyes wild and unfocused, no recognition in them at all. 3 months ago, Dad picked up the story, his voice clinical, controlled. Your cousin Brant was arrested. He tried to strangle his roommate. Said the man was replaced by something else, something wearing his skin. He's 28, Garrett. Earlier onset than usual, but the pattern's the same. So, you decided to poison me instead. I pushed back from the table, standing so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Based on some genetic possibility? Not possibility, Mom said quietly. She pulled out another paper, this one newer, crisp. Certainty. We had your DNA tested 6 months ago. Remember when you got that cut at Easter and I insisted on taking you to urgent care even though you said it was fine? We had them run a genetic panel. You have the markers, Garrett, all of them. I sank back into the chair. Easter, 6 months ago, right when the poisoning started. We researched everything, Dad said, pulling out a notebook filled with his precise handwriting. Every treatment, every medication, every possible intervention, nothing stops it once it starts. The antipsychotics only delay the inevitable. The institutions are filled with men from your mother's family, all shadows of who they used to be. But thallium? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. You chose to poison me with thallium? In small, controlled doses, thallium causes cognitive dampening, Mom explained, wiping her eyes. It slows neural processing without destroying it. We've been monitoring you, adjusting the doses based on your symptoms. Too much fatigue, we reduce it. Any sign of confusion or paranoia, we increase it slightly. The vitamins you've been sending me? Chelation agents to prevent permanent damage, B-complex to protect your nerves, supplements to support your liver and kidneys. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. We've been walking a tightrope, Garrett. Just enough thallium to suppress the onset of symptoms, not enough to cause lasting harm. You had no right, I said, my voice hollow. This was my choice to make. Was it? Dad's voice turned sharp. Would you have chosen to slowly lose your mind? To become violent? To hurt people you love? Your Uncle Theodore broke your aunt's jaw before they committed him. He doesn't even remember having a wife now. You should have told me. We were going to, Mom said desperately, on your 35th birthday. If you made it that far without symptoms, we were going to tell you everything. We have all the treatments ready to clear the thallium from your system. We just needed to get you past the danger years. I stood up again, pacing now, my mind racing through the implications. Every Sunday dinner, every dessert she'd sent home with me, every special bottle of wine Dad had saved. All of it calculated, measured, dosed. The roast tonight? 7 milligrams, Dad said quietly. Precisely measured, mixed into the gravy. Your normal dose. My normal dose, I repeated. The absurdity of it making me want to laugh or scream. I have a normal dose of poison. We check your levels through Dr. Patterson, Mom added. He thinks he's monitoring you for a vitamin deficiency. We've been adjusting based on those results. How many people know about this? No one, Dad said firmly. This is our burden. Our choice, our risk. Your risk? I'm the one being poisoned. You're the one being saved. Mom's voice broke completely. Do you think this has been easy for us? Do you think I don't lie awake every night wondering if we're doing the right thing? But then I remember my father screaming at invisible demons, not recognizing his own children. I remember my brother, who was brilliant like you, creative like you, kind like you, turned into something monstrous by his own brain. I couldn't watch that happen to you. I wouldn't. The room fell silent, except for Mom's quiet sobs. Dad put his arm around her, and for a moment they looked so old, so fragile, like the weight of this secret had aged them decades in 6 months. I need some air, I said, heading for the door. Garrett, Dad called after me. We know you have to make a choice now, whether to continue, whether to turn us in, whether to ever forgive us. But please understand, everything we did came from love. Twisted, maybe, wrong, certainly, but love nonetheless. I stopped at the doorway, not turning around. Love doesn't usually require an antidote, Dad. No, he agreed quietly, but sometimes it requires impossible choices. And parents who would rather be hated than attend their child's funeral or visit them in an institution where they don't remember their own name. I walked out into the night, leaving my parents at their dining room table, surrounded by medical records and poisoned food, and the weight of a decision that would determine whether I died slowly from thallium or lost myself completely to madness. I stood in the driveway, phone in hand, Doctor. Henley's number already dialed, but not yet called. The porch light flickered on, and Dad emerged carrying a cardboard box that looked like it had been stored in the attic for years. Mom followed, her face puffy from crying, clutching a leather journal to her chest. Before you make any decisions, Dad said, setting the box on the hood of my car, you need to see everything. He pulled out a VHS tape labeled Martin, 1987, in my grandmother's handwriting. Then another, Theodore, 1995. Photos followed, dozens of them. Medical charts, brain scans, a family tree drawn on yellowed paper with red X's marked through names I recognized and some I didn't. Your grandmother started documenting it, Mom explained, opening the journal. She watched her husband deteriorate, then her brother, then her son. She spent her last years researching, trying to find a pattern, a cure, anything. I picked up one of the brain scans, holding it up to the streetlight. Areas of darkness spotted the temporal lobe like holes in Swiss cheese. The name on the scan was Samuel Reeves, my great-uncle. The date was 1982. Look at this one, Dad said, handing me another scan. This is Brant's from last month. The similarity was undeniable, the same dark spots, the same pattern of deterioration. But Brant was only 28. It's getting earlier with each generation, Mom said. Your grandmother thought it would skip you because you made it to 30 without symptoms. We were so hopeful. Then Brant's diagnosis came and we had you tested. She flipped through the journal to a page covered in chemical formulas. Your grandmother was a chemistry teacher before she married. Did you know that? She's the one who first theorized about using controlled neurotoxins to suppress the onset. She never had the courage to try it. But you did, I said, still staring at the brain scans. We had 3 months to decide, Dad said. The neurologist we consulted, Doctor. Elizabeth Cray from Johns Hopkins, she doesn't know your real name, but she confirmed the diagnosis based on your genetic markers. She said you had maybe 6 months before the first symptoms appeared, maybe a year before the voices started. 2 years maximum before you'd need full-time care. Mom pulled out a thick medical file. We consulted with toxicologists under false pretenses, asked theoretical questions, did research that would make your skin crawl. We found case studies of accidental thallium exposure that showed cognitive suppression without permanent damage if managed correctly. This one, Dad pointed to a case study, a factory worker exposed to low levels for 2 years, full recovery after chelation therapy, but during exposure, he showed significantly reduced activity in the exact brain regions affected by your family's condition. I was about to respond when Mom pulled out a small recorder from the box. This is your Uncle Theodore last month. The facility sends us updates. She pressed play. A man's voice, hollow and frightened, filled the night air. The walls are breathing again. They want me to remember something, but I can't. There was a boy once. He might have been mine. Or maybe I ate him. I can't remember. The walls won't tell me. Mom clicked it off. That man taught you to fish, Garrett. He had a PhD in literature. He wrote poetry that made people cry. Now he doesn't remember his own son exists. There's more. Dad said, pulling out a series of letters. These are from other families, other branches we tracked down. The Reeves family in Oregon, the Martins in Minnesota. All the same pattern, all the same outcome. I read one letter, dated just 2 months ago. Our son Michael turned 34 last week. He tried to burn down the house because he believed we were replaced by duplicates. He's been committed. We pray every day that he'll have moments of clarity, but they're getting rarer. If you find anything, any treatment, please share it. We're desperate. Patricia Reeves. We wrote back, Mom said quietly. We couldn't tell them what we were doing, but we tried to offer hope. Dad pulled out the final item from the box, a sealed envelope with my name on it. We wrote this the night we started the treatment. If something had gone wrong, if you'd had a bad reaction, this would have explained everything to the authorities. We were prepared to go to prison rather than let you suffer without understanding why. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a confession, signed and notarized, detailing everything they'd done. At the bottom, in Mom's handwriting, we choose to save our son by any means necessary. We accept all consequences. We regret nothing except that we couldn't find a better way. The thallium is working, Dad said, showing me a chart he'd been keeping. Your neural activity has been stable for 6 months. No sign of the deterioration pattern. The dose we've found seems to be the perfect balance. But I'm still being poisoned, I said, though the words had less conviction now. Yes, Mom admitted, and we'll understand if you choose to stop. Dr. Henley can start chelation therapy tonight. The thallium will be out of your system in weeks, and then we'll wait. Maybe the genetics are wrong. Maybe you'll be the exception. Maybe the family curse will skip you entirely. And if it doesn't? Dad met my eyes steadily. Then we'll watch you disappear, piece by piece, knowing we could have prevented it. We'll visit you in whatever facility can manage your violence. We'll pretend to be strangers when you can't remember us. And we'll live with the knowledge that we had a way to save you, and you chose not to let us. That's not fair, I protested. None of this is fair, Mom said. It wasn't fair when my father forgot my name. It wasn't fair when Theodore attacked his own child. It won't be fair if it happens to you. But this, she gestured to the space between us, this conversation we're having right now. You understanding why we did what we did, you being able to make a choice about your own future, that's only possible because of the thallium. Without it, you might already be losing yourself. I looked at the evidence spread across my car hood. 4 generations of madness meticulously documented. Brain scans showing inevitable deterioration. Testimonies from broken families. And my parents, who had chosen to become poisoners rather than watch me become a monster. If I continue, I said slowly, if I let you keep doing this, what happens? We monitor and adjust for the next 2 years, Dad said. Small doses, careful management. If you make it to 35 without symptoms, we gradually reduce the thallium. By 36, you're completely clean. The critical window has passed. And if symptoms appear even with the thallium? Mom's face crumpled. Then we know we tried everything. And we help you make arrangements while you still can. Power of attorney, medical directives, choosing a facility, all the things the others never got to decide for themselves. You've thought of everything, I said, almost admiringly despite myself. We've thought of nothing else for 6 months, Dad replied. Every Sunday dinner, watching you eat, knowing what we were doing, it's been the hardest thing we've ever done. But losing Jenna to that accident taught us something. There are worse things than death. Watching you lose your mind would be one of them. The night had grown cold, and I realized I'd been outside for nearly an hour. Dr. Henley would be calling again soon, possibly with the police. I had to make a choice. I sat in Dr. Henley's office 2 days later, watching her face shift between professional concern and personal betrayal. She'd been our family physician for 15 years, and learning what my parents had done shook her faith in everything she thought she knew about them. The chelation therapy will take about 3 weeks to fully clear your system, she explained, sliding the treatment plan across her desk. We'll monitor your liver and kidney function throughout. The good news is the damage appears minimal. Your parents, as twisted as this sounds, actually did their research well. The doses were carefully calculated to avoid permanent harm. They had notebooks, I said, remembering Dad's meticulous charts. Every dose recorded, every symptom tracked, like I was an experiment. You were, Doctor, Henley said bluntly, but you were also their son. I've been going through the medical literature they must have studied, the amount of research they did, the consultations they arranged under false names, the risks they calculated. It's the kind of dedication you usually only see in parents trying to save children from terminal cancer. Except, in this case, they were giving me the cancer. She pulled up brain scans on her computer. I consulted with Dr. Elizabeth Cray at Johns Hopkins. She's the neurologist your parents contacted. When I explained the situation, she was horrified but also fascinated. She said your case might actually provide valuable data about preventing this type of hereditary psychosis. She wants to study your brain patterns with your permission. To see if the thallium actually worked. To see if neural suppression during the critical onset period might be a legitimate treatment pathway. Obviously, not with thallium, but perhaps with safer alternatives. Your parents might have stumbled onto something important through their desperation. I thought about Uncle Theodore's voice on that recording, the hollow fear in it, the complete loss of the brilliant man he'd once been. What would you do if it were your child? Dr. Henley was quiet for a long moment. I'd like to think I'd handle it ethically, involve the patient in the decision, follow proper medical protocols, but watching someone you love disappear into madness when you might have a way to prevent it? I honestly don't know. Your parents crossed a line, multiple lines actually, but they did it from a place of informed desperation, not ignorance. So, what do I do now? That's entirely your choice. We can continue with the chelation therapy, clear your system completely, and monitor you naturally. Or, and I can't believe I'm saying this, we could explore a medically supervised version of what your parents were attempting. Proper dosing, regular monitoring, full informed consent. Dr. Cray is willing to oversee it as part of a clinical study. I left her office without deciding. The next Sunday, the first one I'd missed in years, Mom called 18 times. I didn't answer. Dad sent one text. We understand. The dinner table will always be set for 3. It took me 2 weeks to make my decision. 2 weeks of staring at those brain scans, reading my grandmother's journal, researching the facilities where my relatives now lived. I visited Brandt in his psychiatric ward. He didn't recognize me, but he told me about the shadows that lived in his teeth and how he had to stay very still, or they'd crawl out and replace everyone he loved. Garrett? He said suddenly, a moment of clarity breaking through. Is that you? Tell them I'm sorry about the roommate. I thought he was something else. I was so sure he was something else. Then the clarity faded, and he went back to whispering to his teeth. I started the medically supervised treatment the next week. Not thallium, but a carefully managed combination of medications that achieved similar neural suppression with less toxicity. Dr. Cray monitors me monthly. Dr. Henley manages the side effects. My parents aren't allowed to be involved in any of the medical decisions, though they pay for everything that insurance won't cover. We have dinner once a month now, not weekly. At restaurants, never at their house. I watch them age a little more each time, the weight of what they did settling into deeper lines around their eyes. Mom still asks if I'm eating enough. Dad still brings articles about teaching methods he thinks might interest me. We don't talk about the 6 months when they were slowly poisoning me. We don't need to. It sits between us at every meal, invisible but acknowledged, like the empty chair where Jenna used to sit. Love doesn't always look like love, I told my support group last week. Sometimes it looks like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like poison. And sometimes, just sometimes, those are the same thing. Marcus, whose parents had him kidnapped and sent to a conversion camp, nodded in understanding. They think they're saving us from something worse than their intervention. The difference is, said Sophia, whose mother had hidden her bipolar medication to make her stronger, whether they're right. I think about that question every day. Were my parents right? Would I have preferred the ignorance of not knowing what was coming, the freedom to deteriorate naturally, the autonomy of choosing my own fate, even if that fate was madness? I don't have an answer, but I have my mind, my clarity, my ability to ask these questions. And in the end, maybe that's answer enough. 6 months from now, if I remain stable, we'll start reducing the medications. A year from now, I might be completely free of them. 2 years from now, I'll either be proof that my parents' desperate intervention worked, or I'll be visiting Brant in the psychiatric ward as a fellow patient, not a visitor. But today, I'm here, I'm myself. I can choose to be angry at my parents for taking away my agency, and I can choose to be grateful that they loved me enough to risk everything to save me. I can hold both truths at once, because my mind is still capable of that complexity. My mother was wrong about one thing, though. Love doesn't require an antidote, but sometimes, apparently, it provides one anyway, measured in milligrams, and served with Sunday dinner, seasoned with desperation and garnished with hope that the people we'd do anything to save might someday understand why we had to destroy them first. The greatest tragedy isn't what my parents did to me. It's that in their position, knowing what they knew, watching what they'd watched, I might have done exactly the same thing. And that truth, more than any poison, is what keeps me awake at night, wondering if love and harm are sometimes so intertwined that we can't separate them without destroying both. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the impossible choices families make in the name of love, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below about what you would have done in my parents' position or in mine. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that explore the complex, sometimes dark nature of family bonds. Because sometimes the most important stories are the ones that don't have clear villains or heroes, just people doing their best with impossible situations, one Sunday dinner at a time.